Welcome to Beyond Words Presents. This week we are here with Pernille Spiers-Lopez. She is the former Ikea North America CEO and used to run the HR for the entire global enterprise, I believe, right?
That's right.
It's awesome. She's also the author of our brand new book, Design Your Life, which I'll hold up here for you to see because I love this cover. It's just fantastic. And so, Pernille, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Whitney. It's great to be here, and it's great to actually be able to talk to you about my book and what's in it, I guess, is more important.
I'm really excited to have you here, and I just want to let everybody out there who's watching know that if you have questions, and I promise you, you will, if you have a question, you can use the Google Hangout app to ask those questions, and be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, and also like us on Facebook. So, Pernille, the first question that I have for you really is just around the title of your book. What do you mean, design your life? I mean, to me, it brings up certain ideas, but to you, what does it mean?
Well, it's interesting. I've been in the design business and furniture business for almost, over 20 years, or almost 30 years, actually. And what it tells me is just that, designing a house and designing a room and anything that has to do with design, to me, is very empowering. It's very exciting, and it just brings out a lot of creativity and ideas. And that is really how I actually came to think about it. In terms of my life and other people's lives is actually to think about the power we have in creating the kind of life that we want to have. I want to share just a little bit of a story of in Denmark. The book came out in 2012, and it was actually there called in Danish, but I'm translating it, If Your Life Was a Kitchen. And it was really based on that most of us women, we will spend an enormous amount of time and energy and get the best experts and shop around for months to just and do the right plans, have conversations about how do we want this kitchen to look and feel like. And it is an enormous amount of time and money and investment we do for creating this nice and wonderful place. And when it comes to our own lives, many of us, including myself, you don't really stop and think about, what can I create? I have the power. So that's really how I was thinking about it, and I feel Design Your Life is sort of instead of a heavy self-help headline, I think this is kind of inspiring, and some of my the people that have read the book or people that I have coached or mentored in the last couple of years, they are sort of telling me, hey, I'm designing my life, when they are changing something and with a big smile on their face, rather than sort of like, yeah, my life is tough, I'm going to see a counselor or whatever. It sort of lifts us up.
Well, and I believe a lot of people's experience of life is really just that it just happens. Like, you just go through life happening, and I guess to me, to some extent, I kind of get what you're saying, but also I feel like there's an aspect of that as well where it's, I can design my life up to a point, but at some point in time, life just steps in and does what life is going to do. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I think it's sort of you're right. I mean, it's not like I set out from the beginning and say, let me just design the perfect life, and then it all happened according to the plan.
What?
And that is not how it happened. I think the key is actually, number one is in designing your life, and when you even just say it, for me, I think the one important thing is that we actually, each one of us, take complete ownership for for our lives. No, it's nobody else's responsibility. Yes, when you're a child, you have your parents. It's their responsibility to sort of get you up to where you can be responsible on your own. But it is very important that each one of us actually take that on, that it is our lives. And I think once you do that, then you create a picture and a direction for yourself. And once you have that direction, and it doesn't need to be a profession, it can be that you want to live an active, purposeful life. It could be that you want to have an impact, that you want to live by certain values, you want to have a lot of meaningful relationships. You can decide sort of the direction you want to have, a meaningful job, all of those things. And then you have that as a background to once you make decisions. I think there's a lot. I spend a lot of time with certainly my own children. They are 21 and 23 today. And even when they were applying for college, thinking about not necessarily just the right college, but what kind of college do you want to go to and why? And more importantly, what kind of what do you find important in life and what are you interested in? And not just what are you academically good at. And I think those conversations continue with, I think, when you graduate from college, because it's overwhelming today. When I graduated from college, I mean, we were sort of like, we had clear ideas. There wasn't that many options. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have all those different possibilities thrown at you. Today, I actually think it is so important to sort of sit back and spend some time reflecting on what you want, because today you are bombarded with possibilities. I brought up my kids saying they could do anything they want, and they know that, but it's really difficult with all the stuff that's out there to then narrow it down and find what is it that I really want to do.
And that is something that I think a lot of people get confronted by. Like, they're asked, what is that one thing that you really want to do? What is your passion? What is your purpose in life? And a couple of weeks ago we had on Derek Rydell, and that was a question that came up for me very quickly, and he gave us some ideas on that. But one of the questions that I just want to ask you in the answer that you just gave, and something that I think is really important, is what does that mean to take responsibility for your life? What does that look like?
Well, I think it is that, at any point, you actually, you cannot always decide what happens. If you're at work, you can't necessarily decide everything that goes on. You cannot decide necessarily who is your boss. Sometimes there's changes. But what you can do is take ownership for how you react to it and what you do about it. We used to work with something that talks about you have really a couple of options when something comes up. It is either you accept it, you change it, or you leave. And if you are in a situation, it is up to you. And I think a lot of people's unhappiness is that they don't see they have a choice, and they don't necessarily see that there are other things they can be doing if this is not what they want to do. Being around and not being happy and not doing anything about it is really a waste of the amazing lives we could have. I also think it's about taking ownership for the job you're doing. So one of the things that I believe is that we're not all going to figure out right away what our passion is. None of us are going to get the perfect job or always have the perfect job. But I think if you roll up your sleeves and do a really good job in what you're doing, suddenly things open up. And if you hate it, if you cannot really enjoy what you're doing, you've got to figure out how to change. I realize there are people that are in situations where they have to put food on the table every day, and they just have to kind of get through and do the best they can. I totally understand. Not everybody can just change jobs and so forth, but you can still make a plan for what you want to do. So responsibility for your life is really feeling the ownership on you, and it's not your boss's fault, it's not the company's fault that your life is maybe not where you want to go. It is certainly not, it's not your spouse, it's not your parents, it really is. Once you own that, it's also a freedom that I think makes it much more exciting.
Yeah, I love that idea of being able to choose, because I think a lot of people, when they're given any sort of, well, and it's how we approach change, I'm sure, for most people, it's like anytime you're given something different that you haven't dealt with before, it just feels like it's being put on you, and you have to accept it. Like, the only choice that I've seen before is that, okay, I'm just going to accept it, usually with a lot of resistance and some hard feelings, but for the most part, I just accept it. So the idea that there's a choice there is really, it's very freeing.
Yeah, and I think it's also, the one thing we know, all of us, is that we will all be living in change all the time. And I know Absolutely. And I think I am absolutely, my personality is one of that. I love change. And believe me, I create change. And there was times in my career where people say, can't you stop changing? And I took that because I realized that, when you run a big organization, sometimes it's important to stop and really reap the benefits of what you've done. You need to make sure that the organization is behind, you implement the systems. You can't keep on changing. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, I have a personality that actually embraces, I enjoy change, and I realize not everybody is like that. And is that right? You're not like that when you...
Most people are not. I'm just thinking about our office and just my life and in general, and I know that most people don't like change. Like when you say it's like whenever we all know that we're 100% all the time in change, I'm like, yes, and I believe a large portion, apparently besides you, Pernille, a large portion of the world fights that change. And it's just interesting to think about, well, we're in it all the time, so we should love it because it's where we are, but we resist it all the time.
And I think it's because we are fearful. We fear that something is not going to be good for us.
Yeah.
And I am very much a believer in that with just little shifts in how we think, looking at it slightly different, you will free up a lot of energy and not be as stressed. And so a way to think about it is actually, if there's a change coming, think about it in terms of, let me find out how I can look at this differently. And even ask a colleague or somebody, and we'll go for a walk and say, in my world now, this is going to change. And I am worried about X, Y, and Z. Most of the stuff we worry about will never happen. And also, and if somebody can help you actually think about it slightly different and look at the positive. And also maybe challenge you with those three things I said: either accept it, change it, or leave. And that is a good exercise to go through. And I think the more you're aware of that change is part of your life, I think the more you also can be comfortable with sort of like rolling with it and not fight it, because that causes stress. When the stress comes when we're out of control. So it's not helpful. So I don't know if that answered you sort of your concern about it, but there are just so many ways, and it's also important as a company and as a leader of an organization, and I know that myself, is that you need to tell people why the change. Or if you want your husband to change, or if you want do something different in your life with a bigger group, you have to really talk about the benefit of it, get people on board, and make it a partnership so that people are not left alone. And I think a lot of companies just announce changes and then they don't go through, well, what does it mean for them, and how do people have a chance to buy in and give input and so forth. So so both on a personal and a professional and company base, change happens all the time, and some of them we don't have a option to, something happens and we have to react to it. But most changes are really things that we can all have some sort of at least knowledge about and input on, or at least a chance to adjust to.
Well, and I love what you said in terms of that stress comes when you're out of control. It's like a few thoughts back, but it just made me think of myself. And sometimes there are days when I feel like, and I've used this phrase around the office, so there will be some of my coworkers who will laugh, but there are some days where I just feel like master of the universe. Like I can get everything done. Everything's just going super well. And those are the days when I actually declare myself master of the universe at the beginning of the day. And so I go into the day knowing that I can handle anything. And then there are some days when I come in and it's just chaos all day long, and I feel completely stressed and exhausted by the time I get home. But I guess those days when I've come in and I've said, I am master of the universe, I have designed my day. So it's just interesting to me.
Well, and to that point, I think I was actually just at this weekend. I was with on a retreat with we were about 15, friends and sisters, and we have done this now. This is our 6th year that we have done this, and we actually had a fabulous woman that was doing mindful meditation on the beach in the morning, and it was just it reminded me of taking a few minutes every morning and set some sort of intention for the day, and that you say, I am, master of my day, and go into the day that way. And then also, when there are just days that are shitty days, and those days, just let it go by. There will be change. It will. This. What is it? This will. This true will pass. This too will pass. They just kind of like ride it out without getting too much into the drama of it. So kind of almost like if you're having a bad day, just remind yourself tomorrow morning you're going to get up and go back into that brilliant day that you're going to have. And I think fighting sometimes these bad days makes it just even worse and more kind of, I think, it takes a bigger toll on you.
Yeah. Well, and I want to give you the opportunity because you are you have so many insights, and it's so interesting to hear all of your perspectives on working and stress and things, but it wasn't always so straightforward for you. Like you had to go through something really traumatic to get to where you are today. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, I mean, I was in I had just been a store manager in Ikea in Pittsburgh. My first job, I had small children. And I was offered this great job as being HR manager for North America. And, I felt like, wow, what an opportunity. I can really make a change for all the hourly employees that I felt we needed to do some things for, help make life more flexible for them. And I was doing more for women. So I was really like, what an exciting opportunity to take on this bigger job as HR for North America. It did, require that I would commute between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, as my husband was just starting his career. We had 2 young children, and we didn't want to move, and we just weren't ready for that. So I thought, well, I can just commute, and my boss was fantastic. He said, of course, and he gave me one of these like big cell phones at the time. They were like this big. And laptop that was like 20 pounds or something. And I commuted back and forth between, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And I took on strategic work. It was a very challenging time because HR was really not on the agenda. And I took on these major strategic, very value-driven, critical questions. And I felt like I owned all of it. Like I didn't. Nobody else in the group, in my management team, wanted to be sort of that supportive of me, so I was always on my own. And I kept on driving and adding on and wanted perfection and fix everybody's problems and really trying to be the best mom, the best wife, and all of those things. And everybody was always saying to me, wow, you never take breaks. And I'm like, no, I'm fine, I'm perfect, Or how do you have people coming over for dinner when you come home on Friday night? Oh, it's fine. And I was in such deep denial because I had just kept on adding more and more and more to myself without taking anything away, and certainly not lowering my standards on anything. And other people could see I was totally imperfect, but I kept on having this illusion that I was just this master, superwoman. And at one time I was in Philadelphia. I was, at a meeting that I was holding, and it was all about, I remember it was about diversity. It was about really talking about next steps. And it was just meeting a lot of kind of resistance, and that resistance kept, sort of eating at me. And I remember my arm felt very numb all day. And when I got out with a colleague, I was driving back to the hotel, and I just felt on the way that it was just, there was something happening. I couldn't tell what it was, but I was afraid that I actually would collapse on the road as we were driving, and I was at some point debating if I should continue, but then I saw an off street, getting off the freeway, and I got off and I told my friend, I am not feeling well. I think I'm going to collapse. He calls 911, and 911 comes, and I find out that it is really not a heart attack, which I thought it was, or a stroke. Get taken in the ambulance, full, flashing lights, and get to the emergency room, and I went through all kinds of tests, and the doctor comes out to me and he says, I just want to let you know that you are physically okay, but you have been under stress over a long period of time. And I wasn't ready to accept it. I was in my early 40s. I was still that superwoman. You don't build up that kind of system and then kind of one little thing says, okay, get back, now I'm going to change my life. So I went right back in the car, was happy that I wasn't going to die, at least, at the moment, and went to dinner, and I called my husband and said, honey, I just had a little bit of an incident, but I'm okay. And he's like, okay, I'm glad you're good. And we didn't talk about it for a while. A year later, I'm at a retreat, a personal development group that I was part of with Ikea, which was extremely helpful. And in that group is when I really understood that I was I'd lost myself. And it happened by the woman that was facilitating. She said, why are you always leaning forward? And I was more comfortable leaning forward because then nobody would ask me any questions. So she sort of called me on it, and I had to sit back, and then I realized I was very sad that I missed so much in my life everywhere because I was not present. I just kept on thinking about the next thing. And so that really started a long, long journey of really being much more in control and try to learn how to keep things at a slight distance and manage all these things that come at you. So I have redefined success by it's not about what you achieve in life in terms of money, career, how big your house is or how big of a company you're building or whatever. It really is how you can handle, when you can stand with both feet grounded in who you are, handle the things that come at you every day and do what you love to do, and do all of that without losing yourself. And that is a life journey.
It is one of the most important things, and I just want to mention to everyone who's watching, you can get Pernille's new book, Design Your Life, this as well as a 1-hour Skype call with Pernille for $200. It's a great deal. I feel so lucky right now that I get to be on this call with you, Pernille. And could you tell the people who are watching what that Skype call would look like?
Well, as you know a little bit about me, I will make that very much up to the person that chooses to maybe purchase this. But it really is really trying to get into how I can be most helpful in how they can get started on designing their life. And so I would probably want that person to just think about really how the questions that they really want to get answered, and how we can, or in their life, not by me, but the questions that they are really struggling with or thinking about, and if it is about how they get started in designing their lives, that's a perfect start.
Well, and if you would like to purchase this, you can go to www.beyondword.com/Pernille. That's Pernille. So be sure to jump on there and grab this really quickly, because I know that Pernille is going to help you see brand new things in your life that you never saw. And one of the things, Pernille, I want to ask you is, how do you know that you, like, what's that moment when you know you found your passion, that you're living your design life? Like, how do you know that you're doing that and not maybe living somebody else's life that they've designed for you? Because I know that happens a lot too.
I think it's, I guess what you're asking a little bit about is when do you know that you're happy, and when do you know? I think part of it is actually describing for yourself when are some things really, when are you doing the things that you really love to do. And so in your life, it could be that you remember that there was a time where you were just really excited about what you were doing. So I can, for myself, talk about that. In all the years that I worked for Ikea, I was excited about going to work every day. And I didn't have that Sunday blues that I've had at different times in my life. But I loved going to work because I just felt like it was a company that was on a mission to really provide a better everyday life for the many people. I had a tremendous freedom to do things. I could choose to do the job, and it was always expected of me to do a good job, but there was always opportunities to do other things. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, I loved the people I worked with. I mean, it was just 135,000 of very, we were all different, but we all sort of had a similar kind of approach to life. And so in a lot of ways, I didn't have to shift my personality when I went to work. I was at work as the person I am. And I think when you know that you are living what you like to do, and when you are aligned with your values with the people that you're working with in the company, it just gives you such a freedom, and you don't feel like you're in a straitjacket and have to there are people that say you need to leave your personal life at the doorstep when you walk into a company. I think that's impossible. How can we do that? So I think the life that is passionate is maybe an overused word, and I think passion, we use that when we're in love, when we first meet new things and we're sort of giddy about it. I would say it's just that it really is what energizes you. If you can find what it is that energizes you, and if you have a job where there is no energy, you do not want to go there every morning. You're sort of on the wrong track. So if you can maybe switch the word to energizing, and like your personal energy comes from this, and then also this idea of alignment with your values. So if you're a person that like a specific, freedom and independence is, I think, a value of a lot of people. So obviously you can't have a job where you're completely the company is so structured, there's no way for you to be you. So those are some of the things, and I can say that in the jobs I've had, when there's been where I feel I didn't fit in and I couldn't contribute, I couldn't speak sort of my, it's not like I can always say exactly what I want. No one can ever do that in a job, and you don't even do that with your friends. But where I could really be myself, and like I said, I love the mission. I love being part of home furnishings and creating great homes for people. Today, I think one of the most exciting things for me is that I am on a couple of different boards, and I love that because I have my own schedule. I have to prepare things, and I go to these board meetings, but the organizations I work with are just they're just very nice organizations, and especially I think the work I do with Save the Children, it's just really important work in today's world, and to be able to do some things there and have an impact, I realize it aligns with everything, and I think for me, that's when you're doing the right thing.
Well, and one thing that you're pointing to that I think a lot of people have confronted is, and myself included, is that we may have at some point in time sat down and designed something for ourselves in our lives, and at one point in time that was either achieved or was no longer the thing that really energized us, but we kind of cling on to it as that thing, and so instead of still energizing us, it kind of becomes that have to, okay, this is what I need to do right now. It becomes that more of that burden as opposed to that energizing thing. And so that's when it sounds like you maybe not that happened with you with IKEA, but at the same time, you reinvented yourself. You found this new realm that really fulfilled you.
Well, it's interesting because I think that's a very good question with me, because everything, my mentor always said everything has a season, and the reason I left IKEA was I was traveling too much. It just didn't match up anymore. I mean, it was crazy what I was doing commuting, So at some point, I had to actually say the season is over. And also the illusion that maybe I would be working with IKEA for the rest of my life. I mean, that was just not going to happen. And there is, even if it was a great company, there's other things you can do, but you have to almost kind of like allow yourself to just kind of maybe kill the illusion that this is what I thought I was going to do, and it's like you almost have to mourn that now it's gone, and you have to create something new. And so if I remember when I was a journalist, I mean, I really was thinking that I could be a really good journalist. And then when I decided I was just not going to do it didn't look like I was going to be a good journalist. But then how do you accept at the age of 23 that I better like put that to the side? That is just not going to happen. And I was just constantly, rejected. And at some point, like you said, maybe it's good to just say, you know what, maybe now I wrote a book. So after all these years, I became a writer anyway, but it just went another way. So I do think that it's important to just let go, because the more, if you hang on to a season when it's actually done, you're really living, it's a stretched life where you're just kind of like, I'm hanging on to this because it was a dream, but I need to let it go and start over. And maybe there's part of the dream that you can still have, or you can say, the core of that dream was about this, and that I will hang on to, but the rest got to go. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and it makes me think of something that you recommend in your book is people keeping a journal, and I'm just thinking that is that the place where you would recommend? How do you recommend journaling? Because everybody's always saying, oh, you should journal, but I feel like, okay, so I could sit there and I could write about what I ate the day before, but that's not actually going to help me. So what is your version of journaling?
Well, let me give you, I will come back to journaling, but there's a couple of things that I think in the book, what I've done is actually provide some tools to kind of, so it's not like, 7 steps to designing your life, but there are tools in there that you can use for different things in your life. There's something called the 4 rooms of change, which I think is a really good tool to assess where you are with certain things in your life. There is an exercise about core values. There's an exercise about what's really your personal power and all of those kind of things. So there is a way, like I think if you look at some of those tools, that you actually can work with yourself to address some of those things, or you can work with a good friend that you can have coffee with. But there are some tools in there that I think are very helpful if you don't want to journal. Coming back to journaling, so I have not always been journaling, and when I had that anxiety attack, and I was so lost, and knew that I had to do something, but I didn't want to talk to anybody. I felt like really lonely and was kind of living with this myself. And I read about this book, and I mentioned it in my book too, and it was called The Artist's Way, it was such a helpful, and what I really caught on to was that because I had lost myself, I had to find myself, and I think the way she describes, her name is Julie Cameron, she describes that when we're lost, or when we've lost our creative side, we need to kind of chip away, and one of her exercises is that you literally are using a journal to write for, I think it's 3 weeks, 3 pages every morning before you go out of bed. And what that did was very interesting, because the first couple of days you have to write 3 pages, so you just have to write it uncensored, and you write about, oh yeah, yesterday I went to the gym, or I had dinner with this friend, or I came home and the family had dinner. You describe your day. And the more after you've done that, you really get bored with just describing things. So you start saying, this really made me upset yesterday. So you start sort of getting closer to yourself. And so after 3 weeks, I felt very much that I could see a pattern. that was happening over a good, because the things that upset me, there was a pattern to why they were upsetting me. Or, so when you do it that long, you actually get much closer to yourself. And now you can be honest with yourself. But I realize it is absolutely not something for everybody. I was just at this retreat and people were asking me, what if somebody reads your journal? And I just feel that if I am never afraid that somebody's going to read my journal, because I think if somebody does that, that is one of the worst things you can do. That to me is worse than stealing. If you want to go in and look what somebody has written in their journal without their permission, shame on you, and you have to live with that. And if you find something that I have written, don't ever bring it up to me, because I never allowed you that. This is my most intimate thoughts with myself, and it does not belong to anybody else. But I realize it is really a struggle for a lot of people, and I think because people don't know what to write, and I think we think that we have to make some sort of meaning out of it. When I look back, I love reading journals from a couple of years ago, and I'm like, whoa, was that really what I was thinking? But once you write it down, it's off your mind. I call it downloading, both download your head, download your emotions, and it gives you sort of like, okay, wow, I just wrote all of these things, now what? Or leave it and come back to it a couple of days later. But I do know it is, for many it's difficult, and I don't do it every day. I do it. I really try to do it, and I do it a lot on airplanes when nobody's disturbing, and I'm kind of usually coming back from a trip that's a vacation or a trip with work, and it's just a perfect time to download and reflect.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed with myself and with a lot of women is that we have a hard time admitting that we're not just fine. Like we don't have it all together. And so maybe for some people journaling is one place to do that. But do you have tools for women who like me, I don't want to tell anybody that I don't have everything together, because then that means I don't have everything together, and then the world is just about to end. So how do you get over that in order to get to the point where you can even take the first steps in designing your life?
So I think if you don't want to journal, I think again it's a perfect opportunity for you to start doing some of those exercises, like the 4 rooms of change. So there's 4 rooms. There's the room of inspiration, denial, chaos, and contentment, denial, chaos, and inspiration. And it kind of explains how you do it. It's pretty simple, but it gives you an opportunity to sit by yourself and say, okay, if I'm in denial about something, let's say that it's your work, and there's a little bit of a guide of what qualifies to be in the different rooms. So that's one way. The other thing, I am just such a supporter of bringing women together. If you have 2 or 3 people that you said, why don't we get together once a month and maybe use my book to have discussions about different topics? Because what I have learned is that women are not really great on our own. We need to have other people to share with. And if we decide we're going to have a group of 4 or 5 people where everything is okay, we can share everything, but it also stays in that room. It does not take more than a couple of minutes before women totally get things out that's on their mind. And people, I've seen, it doesn't take long for people to share real emotions with each other, and so I think having a group of people that you trust and decide that use this to kind of get all of these things out and help structure what you want to do. And then you have these friends and people that will actually help you go forward with, a plan. They also know you now, so when you say, so here's what I'm going to do about my job, you can ask them, and they're out for you being happy. So that is, I think that could be a very, that is sort of like I hope that this book will do, that there are these circles around the country where people are sitting, talking, and really sharing with each other.
I love that idea, and I'm a super social person, so for me that actually sounds better than journaling. So that sounds fantastic. And I just want to remind everybody really quickly that you can get your copy of Design Your Life. And I forgot to mention last time that it is going to be an autographed copy of Design Your Life, as well as a 1-hour Skype call with Pernille herself, all by yourself, for $200. And to get that, you can go to www.beyondword.com/Pernille, Pernille. And I also want to remind everybody that if you have a question, you can send it in via the Google Hangouts app. And we actually do have a question from a viewer. And the question is, what have you learned about the relationship between money and success?
So what I've learned about, first of all, I do believe that doing what I like to do comes before I want to necessarily think about how much money does it pay. I have a feeling that when you really do, when you do what you really like to do, and that you are, kind of doing your absolutely best job, and you are moving things forward, in some way money comes. And I'm not saying that in a way that you should just sit back and rely on that, oh yeah, then no. Women definitely have to take a very active role in making sure we get compensated for what we do, and that money is a very important part of our work life. And if we're in business, we just got to be really good at taking care of ourselves financially. So I'm not in any way saying that money is not important, but I do believe that if you truly go after what it is that you're passionate about, and that you really are, and you feel success is, for me, success is about leaving a legacy behind, or have impact in the world, having something, or have impact in your community, or that you're doing something that matters. And if you do that, and you do that well, for me, what else is there success to be? What else could you ask for? If you're happy, if you have a wonderful family and friends, money. I have just seen that money does not make people happy, and if that's what you drive for, you will live a very stressed. I think if that's your only driver to make money, and think that because you make a lot of money you're successful, I've never seen it. I've never seen anybody that are completely money driven to really be successful human beings, because it's just too big of a sacrifice. So that's my view.
Well, and it's
I also think it's important to be financial competent, and want to be clear that we are not working for less money just because we might be, there are many studies that women are not were not paid equally for the same jobs, but that we have an ownership in that. And but success for me is absolutely about living the life that you really want to live, and that you are happy, and that you're content and confident in yourself.
Well, and it sounds to me like what you're saying is that money is an aspect of what your success may be. So there's something bigger than money, and just to focus on money, it's like, okay, so if you got that money, then what? Like, what is the meaning of getting that money? What's behind that? And so, yeah, if you just focus on money, it's like you're taking one step where you are asking us to take 10. So it's looking at what's behind that.
Absolutely. No. I think that's a great conclusion of it. Absolutely. I mean, financial success is, I think, very few people will say that that's not an important part of life, that you want to do well, and you want to do well for your family, and you want to live a good life. But be driven strictly by money and think that money equals success, I think I certainly don't see it that way.
So one of the things you talked about, that you have a couple of exercises in the book. One is how to find your power. One is how to find your passion. How do you find, I'm guessing both of those come into how do you define success for yourself? Because that, for me, that's a really enticing goal, is to figure out what success is for me. So how would somebody start to figure that out?
Well, there's a couple of exercises. I think one of them is actually to, um, you know, figure out what really is, who are you and what are your personal drivers. And there's a whole exercise about really sort of defining a couple of core values. So, Whitney, you would go through a lot of different things you're brought up with in terms of, from school, from religion, from work, so many different values are sort of come into our lives, and at some point you don't even know which ones are yours and which ones are just things that other people piled onto you or influenced you with. So it's a great exercise to go back to, okay, what do I really believe in? Who am I? And what are the things that I truly believe are my core beliefs and values? So that is one, and I think that creates a lot of like ahas of, like I know for sure that one of mine is curious and courage. Like everything, I am a very curious person. I always want to know. I always want to ask questions. I want to get to know people. I want to find out what goes on behind the scene. When I'm on a cruise ship, I want to know how the employees are living on the cruise ship, where everybody else is maybe not thinking about that. Courage. I am not afraid of standing in front of people, etc., etc. So getting to your core values, I think, is one aspect. The other one is really kind of describing to yourself, over time, developing your personal mission. Why are you here on Earth? Why is Whitney here? What is it that you would like people to say about you? What have you left behind when you're no longer here? And I think that is, it sounds corny, but that process is actually very helpful. And I think when you do those two things, those are, I think, a really good start to look at least, getting yourself a draft of. And I think these things are life works. It's not something that you finish in a day. And some people are at it for, I've been at it for like 20-some years, and I still enjoy rethinking it and reworking it and so forth. So I think some of those tools, I think, would be very helpful.
Well, and it's so interesting because it brings me back to your very first point about talking about actually taking the time to design your life, like putting time into it, like you would put time into your kitchen. Because as soon as you said all this, I'm just like, it'll just all work out. I'll figure it out at some point in time, whatever. And then it'll just fall into place, because that's exactly what you're talking about. It's that I don't, and many women out there don't stop to take the time to ask themselves those questions, to figure out their core values, to find out what legacy do they actually want to leave, to stop, take a moment, think about myself, figure out what is it that I want my life to be all about? What is my mission in life?
Absolutely, and I think it is so important also to know that no life is better than the others. I think there is this, maybe, I've had people kind of comment on that. Design your life sound like it's a privilege for the few. And I have seen so many people that have so little in terms of financial resources or materialistic things that actually have made much bigger, really heroic changes in their lives than people that have been given so much that, with the things they already have, they can't figure it out. So I think it is not about money. It is not about, being, highly, you don't have, the highest educated people might never figure out what they want to do. So it really is that each one of us can do this, and that our lives all turn out differently. I get also that, are you speaking to just working women or just women? No, I feel that this is a approach that if you have the right attitude, I think you can really, regardless of where you are, design your own life. And if you decide for a few years and that you want to be a stay-at-home mom, what a great decision to make. Who is everybody else to put down, think about that in any kind of, with our noses kind of like up in the air and looking at it like that's not good. It absolutely, what could be a better job to do that? But not everybody's going to do that. I didn't do that. but I respect the women. I know that I wouldn't be that great at it, but I see women that are, stay-at-home mom for like, a big part of their kids' young childhood, and are fabulous at it and love it. But so each one of our lives are different, and one is not better than the others. And we should always remember that, because envy is that is just the wrong way to go. That when you are envy of other people, you are very unhappy.
Yeah. Well, and it brings up another thing that you had in a section in your book that very much speaks to something that comes up in my brain all the time. It's just getting rid of shoulds. Because as soon as you said that thing about, if you choose to be a stay-at-home mom, I'm like, no, but, I've had all this education, and I should be doing these really impressive things, and I should be out there helping people, and I should be, trying to make something really huge of my life, and staying at home with just my kid, that's not as big of a difference. I should do something more. Like, I'm shoulding myself to death.
I would say that is a word that we all need to just get out of our lives, because it's either I want to do it or I have to do it. Should is really, like, sometimes you just have to do something, and then you do it. You roll up your sleeves, even if you don't like it, and you do it. And then there's want. But the should is this, like, really gray, like it's kind of like you're on autopilot, you have no opinion about it, and you don't want to do it, but you don't really want to say no, and you're not going to put your heart into it. So I will say that if we can get that out of our vocabulary, or catch ourselves, and I catch myself when I say should, because of course I use it as much probably as many other people, but it's good to stop ourselves and say, what is this should? Why should I do that? Who's asking me to do that? To try to kind of sort through some of those things.
Well, I feel like looking at the shoulds might help shed some light on somebody's core values, because those shoulds might be coming from a core value that they thought was theirs, but might not necessarily be. Might be a value that their parents raised them with, and so everything that comes from that value ends up being a should, as opposed to a I want to.
Absolutely, and I would say I meet a lot of, and I would imagine we all have done this, but when you're passive aggressive, that's when you've done shoulds for too long. When, exactly what you said, well, I am home because I should be home, or, I'm working because I should be working, or when you use that and you feel that other people have made the decision for you, you have abdicated your responsibility and your leadership for your own life, and that's never good. Even if there are times where you just have to, temporarily do some things that could be a should, because I'm sure we all get in those situations, but don't make that 90% of what you do. So.
Absolutely. Well, it is a society too. I mean, society impresses upon us so many shoulds, and this is how it should be, and this is how you should do things, and because you're a woman, you should be doing this, and you should be doing this, or because you're a man, you should be doing this, or you should be doing this. And it's really me, individually, as a person, Whitney Kwan Diffenderfer, who is a female, who is living my life, what do I want? What do I want to do? And, devoid of society and all of those other voices that are constantly coming in at us.
Yeah, and I think, Bill, you got to also, there are people that use the word branding yourself. I just think you need to make an inventory of who are you and what are you good at, because there's always this comparison of, oh, this is a really highly respected job. I was just speaking to a couple of nurses this weekend that in their mind, they actually feel that the nurses' whole profession is put down. And I said, come on, you are highly educated. There's so many ways you can use your degree today. And so if I feel that I'm small and insignificant, then I am certainly not helping, the rest of the world to see me as a strong and powerful woman. And so sometimes it is some work on saying, what am I good at, and what are really the facts is what I have experienced. So yes, I might have been home for 10 years with my kids, but I am sure most women do not sit at home and don't learn new things. They have probably been running different organizations. They have, taught their kids a number of things. They're very organized. They have been, engaged in the school. They have volunteered. They run a pretty good house. Like they are able to manage a lot of different things. So it is about building ourselves up to also feel, and that women don't do as much. It is much more comfortable for men. They have a natural, at least in my experience, much more just natural confidence, and sometimes they pretend. What is it? We fake it till we make it.
Yes.
And I'm not believing that we should fake it, but we also do need to give ourselves credit and make an inventory of what we truly are capable of doing.
Mm. Well, and there's a lot of women that I know we feel like we're faking it till we make it, when we actually, in fact, do know what we're doing.
That's what I mean.
We've had the experience, we've been educated, we know what we're doing, but still in our minds, we're faking it.
And because we never feel we're good enough. And that is one of our, I think, one of the, we're humble to a fault. And we're actually much more comfortable in our darkness than in our lightness. It's much easier to say, oh, I'm not that good, because then I'm not, I think I'm not really offending other people, or I'm not coming across as, know-it-all or whatever. So there is that balance, because nobody really gets inspired by somebody that's always down and feeling they're nobody.
Mm-hmm.
So, believing in yourself does not mean that you need to be arrogant and cocky and look down on other people. But if you shine, other people actually get inspired by it. And I've just seen so many people, I have so many examples of looking at people that came from no confidence, questioning themselves, to just by taking on new challenges that they weren't prepared for but believed that they could do, just because they kind of had somebody, behind them and supporting them, and just see how people's lives change.
Mm. Well, and one of the things that was mentioned in the foreword of your book is that your tactic really is to be very quiet and to ask questions and to have people, almost to not force people like aggressively, but to give people an opening to step forward and say, yes, I know this, and I'm going to share this, and this is something that I am bringing to this table. And it's from the person who wrote your foreword said, it really allows them to blossom and grow.
Mm-hmm. So I would say I probably many times talk way too much, but I think when I'm in situations where it's about growing a person, or I like to turn things upside down or go about it a little bit different. So I like to ask very probing and probably challenging questions, because I want people to really kind of think about, what is it that's really behind, how they are living or what they're thinking, etc. And so I do always turn things upside down, and I have always been. I just think most people, we believe that, I've been giving incredible challenging jobs when I didn't think I was ready, or I never thought I was going to be president of Ikea North America and lead huge expansion. And if it wasn't for somebody behind me saying, I think you can do it, I would never necessarily have done it. So I think it's also just daring go out in places where you literally have not been before, and relying on you have some of those core things and basic things that it takes to be successful. So if you wait till everything is perfect, you will never. It's really in the challenging times we grow the most, and I've learned that. I've learned most when I have been completely overwhelmed with a new challenge, but then saying, give it time, I'll figure it out. And there's plenty of people around you that have all the answers. And I think that is in my relationship with mentoring, I find that it is really about getting people to see their own light and their own possibilities, and then when they do, there is no limit to how far they can go.
I love that. Well, we're almost at time, and I just wanted to ask you if there's one thing that you would leave people with, if there's one piece of advice or one question, one of your probing questions that you would have people contemplate to get them on the road to designing their own life, what would that be?
I really do think that it's about, in a lot of ways, it really is about, am I bold and brave enough to really ask myself the questions, am I living the life I really want to live? And what does it take to design the one I really want? I think those are critical things for me. And good enough or I'm okay, I think just tells you're not really bold and brave enough. Sometimes it is about doing something a little bit different, and it doesn't have to be radical change in your life. It can be, you know, start something that you have never done before and experience sort of like being a new learner. So be bold and brave and you know, really make sure you live the life that you really want to and that makes you happy.
Thank you very much for that.
Absolutely.
Well, Pernille, thank you so much for being on the show. One more time, I'll let people know that you can get your autographed copy, I'll be correct this time, your autographed copy of Design Your Life, as well as a 1-hour Skype interview with Pernille for $200 at www.beyondword.com/Pernille, Pernille. Make sure you run and get that soon, because I've just had a fantastic hour with Pernille, so I can't imagine what it would be if it was just I could just focus on me. I feel like I could break through all sorts of things. But just so everybody knows, next week we are going to have Victoria Zackheim. She is the editor of our book, Faith. She's going to be reading from a couple of the different essays that are included in her book, as well as engaging with us in a conversation about a very controversial topic. So be sure to be there, same time, same place. And again, Pernille, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you.